to Win call. My name is Hal Ginsberg. I am the East Region Coordinator. You tell us your name and where you are from in the chat, and I'll try to get a shout out to you. Tonight's call is focused on voting rights and tomorrow's New York City elections. And we are able to put together calls like this every week because of the support of our members, people like you. If you aren't already a member of Our Revolution, please consider becoming a movement builder. For as little as $5 a month, we'll mail you. We're not going to email, we're going to mail you a personalized 2021 Movement Builder membership card. You can sign up at the link in the chat, which is ourrev.us/2021 member. And if you're on the phone, press *3 and an operator will take your information. So we are seeing names in the chat. We've got Mike in Indianapolis, and that's the only name. I thought I saw a whole bunch more. Let me see if I can refresh that. I know there are 37 participants. There we go. Jenny in West Virginia. We've got Bruce in Coral Springs, Florida. Doesn't that sound nice? Barry is in Toledo, Ohio. Shout out to you, Barry, a sustaining member. We have another Bruce. Oh, no, that's in Florida. We've got Maruxa shouting out to Bruce. Ellie in Westchester. Lucero in South Carolina. Steve in Evanston, Illinois. All over the country. We've got a great call. You can see the awesome speakers we've got lined up tonight. U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley, he is a great friend of Our Revolution. We always welcome him on our calls. Jasmine Crockett from the Texas House of Representatives. She's going to tell us about some pretty exciting events down there in the Texas State House and real progressive doings in the Lone Star State. Barbara Arnwine from the Transformative Justice Coalition. She is the founder and president. Tahani Abushi, she is on the ballot tomorrow in the Big Apple. If you are there, vote for Tahani Abushi for Manhattan District Attorney. And finally, last but certainly not least, Cynthia Nixon. You heard right. She is the actor from many movies, TV shows, and of course, we know her best as a great progressive activist and candidate. I'll bet there are a lot of New Yorkers out there who may have wished they had voted for her in the last gubernatorial election. So again, we ask you to keep us going every week with great calls, great speakers, great guests, great content. ourrev.us/2021 member. If you're on the phone, press *3 and an operator will take your information. We got about 90 more seconds and we're going to get to the real call, the real discussion with Joseph Guy-Varghese, our executive director, and Marissa Mormeal, who keeps us going as our awesome administrative executive. So we've got Dana in Columbia, Maryland. Hey, Dana. We've got Kevin in Reston, Virginia. Carmen in Florida. And I've seen some other names have already. Let's see if we can get some more folks on there. Again, it's a little slow with the chat. So if you get a chance, put your name in there. We've got about 1 more minute left. And I'm just so excited about this call. And, I got to admit it, I definitely am into the Hollywood scene. So having Cynthia Nixon, one of my favorites on the call, really is making me excited about this conversation and all the other awesome speakers as well. Senator Merkley, Representative Crockett, Barbara Arnwine, and soon to be Manhattan District Attorney Tahani Abushi. We have had great results with our district attorneys. Of course, in Philadelphia, Larry Krasner is just been reelected, and he is the model for many great progressives running for district attorney. I'm sure Tahani Abushi will be joining him in his reforming criminal justice in one of our great cities, the greatest, the biggest in the United States. And it's 8:30, so let me turn this call over to my executive director, Joseph Guy-Varghese.
Thank you very much, Hal, and good evening, brothers and sisters. My name is Joseph Kivargis. I'm the executive director of Our Revolution. Every Monday night, over 5,000 progressives from coast to coast join our national organizing call. We join on Zoom, we join on Facebook, we join on the phones, we join to talk about what we are doing collectively to advance the political revolution. And speaking of revolution, this weekend we marked the first ever Juneteenth federal holiday. We marked it to note the end of slavery in the United States. Our revolution endorsed Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee championed this holiday or holy day to serve as a reminder that we must be ever vigilant against the forces of tyranny and oppression. And brothers and sisters, vigilant we must be. Today in our country, voting rights are under sustained attack by right-wing Republicans and the billionaires that enable them. Nearly 400 anti-voting measures have been introduced, and more than a dozen have already been enacted. Republicans do not want progressives to vote. They do not want people of color to vote, and they are using whatever levers of power they can to disenfranchise our voices. That's why our revolution is doing everything possible to get the U.S. Senate to pass the For the People Act and to honor the spirit of Juneteenth. We don't just need a holiday. We need our rights defended now.
And tonight, our first three speakers will focus on defending our voting rights. First, we have Senator Jeff Merkley, the lead Senate sponsor of the For the People Act, and he'll update us on what needs to happen in order to get the bill passed. And then we'll be joined by Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett, who joined her Democratic colleagues in a walkout at the Texas State House to protest a GOP voting restriction bill. And we'll hear from Barbara Arwine, a leader on civil rights and voting rights, and the founder of Transformative Justice Coalition, on the importance of passing voting rights legislation in Congress. And speaking of voting, tomorrow is the New York City primary, and tonight we'll be joined by activist and actor Cynthia Nixon and Our Revolution endorsed candidate Manhattan District Attorney Tahani Abushi. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please put them in the Zoom Q&A, or if you're joining us on Facebook, you can leave it in the comments. And if you're joining us by phone, press *3 and an operator will take your question. But before we bring up our lineup, let's start with an Our Revolution roundup of progressive activism from around the country.
Thanks, Marissa. Yes, we have an amazing lineup. Cynthia Nixon, Senator Jeff Merkley, Jasmine Crockett, who led the walkout in the Texas House, amazing activists, and they are supported by Our Revolution. What is Our Revolution? We were founded by Bernie Sanders, and today Our Revolution is America's leading grassroots-funded, progressive political action organization. Let me say that one more time. We are America's leading grassroots-funded, progressive political action organization. Brothers and sisters, our mission is simple. We are organizing locally. We are organizing locally and building up into a national network of grassroots groups who are powerful enough to hold politicians accountable, who are powerful enough to elect progressive champions up and down the ballot, groups that are powerful enough to advance progressive policy, whether at the municipal, county, or federal levels, and groups that are powerful enough to take over and transform Democratic parties wherever they are. I want to start tonight by focusing on what we as a movement are doing to advance our progressive policy agenda. In a recent survey, our members ranked our top 5 policy priorities that we demand Congress and the president get across the finish line before the midterm electoral season starts. We elected Democrats to deliver. And here's what we want them to deliver on. We want them to deliver on healthcare, want them to deliver on climate change. But our number one thing, the thing that we understand that we want Democrats to stand up for, is voting rights. If we do not protect our voting rights, nothing else will be realizable. Tonight, we're going to be focused on issue priority number 1. Marissa?
And tomorrow is a big day for voting rights in the Senate. First, the Senate will hold a hearing on DC Statehood Bill S-51, which has 46 co-sponsors in the Senate. We've never been this close to winning on the civil rights and voting rights issue. And an important part of defending our democracy is to grant the 700,000 residents of the District of Columbia full voting rights, and that means full representation in Congress. Also, tomorrow, the Senate is expected to vote on a motion to proceed on this For the People Act. And that's why our Revolution members will be rallying on Capitol Hill tomorrow morning with our voting rights allies, making sure senators hear us loud and clear. It's long past the time to end taxation without representation in DC and to fight back against the outrageous attacks on voting rights around the country. And if you're in DC, sign up to join us. The link is in the chat. Hope to see you there tomorrow.
And you know what, Marissa? Not only are we organizing to hold politicians accountable to our progressive priorities, we're also electing progressive champions who will be our voices in the halls of power. Example number 1 is our very own Nina Turner. Imagine having her powerful voice in Congress. Her primary is just a little bit over a month away, and we are going all out to get Nina Turner elected to the U.S. House from Congressional District 11 in Ohio. A recent poll has Nina ahead. She's got over 50% of the vote in a crowded field, and the establishment is afraid. Last week, Nina got a surprise. Hillary Clinton threw her support behind Nina's opponent. Well, if Hillary thinks that was a setback for Nina Turner, it wasn't. Nina had her best fundraising day ever after Hillary rolled out her endorsement. Look, it's no surprise that the Democratic establishment is going all out to stop Nina Turner, the former head of our revolution. Last year, Hillary actually also went after Jamal Bowman by endorsing his opponent, Elliot Engel. Look, brothers and sisters, we helped Jamal win, and our Revolution Ohio members are going to make sure that Nina joins him in Congress. So take that, Hillary Clinton.
And speaking of primaries, Joseph, tomorrow is the New York City primary for the mayor, comptroller, public advocate, city council, borough presidents, and district attorneys. New York City is using ranked choice voting for the first time in this primary, and our Revolution members are working hard to elect over 30 endorsed progressive candidates in these races, including Maya Wiley for mayor, Tahani Bushi for Manhattan DA, and she'll be joining us later on this call. And so far, we've made 268,000 voter contacts through calls, texts, and emails in this race.
So not only are our members going all out to elect progressive champions, not only are we going all out to fight for progressive public policies, we're also fighting to transform the Democratic Party. This Sunday, our revolution is working with the DNC Environment and Climate Crisis Council, which is led by our Revolution Michigan leader, Michelle Dietrich, to hold an online rally to call on the Democratic Party, to call on all elected officials at every level of government who are Democrats to stop subsidizing fossil fuels. We need to send our elected officials a message. They must act to end the subsidization of and the extraction of dirty fossil fuels. Join us for this special online rally with the DNC to get every Democrat to support saving our climate. The link is in the chat.
And not only are we fighting to end fossil fuel subsidies with online rallies, but we'll be fighting in the street. Next week, we'll be on Capitol Hill with Greenpeace, Sierra Club, and other climate allies with a giant dinosaur that eats taxpayer dollars. So let us know if you think this dinosaur that you see right here should be our next sticker in the chat and comments. And you can RSVP as well with the link in the chat, or press *3 and an operator will help you. And our Revolution members are doing some amazing stuff across the country, as you heard just a little bit about what we're doing. And we can only do this work with your support. We don't take any corporate money, so we rely on our sustaining members. You know, our average contribution, I think, is about $17. So for everyone who is already a movement builder, thank you so much. And if you haven't already done so, please sign up. The link is in the chat. You can go to rrev.us/2021member. And if you are on the phones, you can press *3 and an operator will help you with that information as well.
Awesome. So now I want to bring up our first guest to talk about a very critical piece of legislation. Our members identified protecting voting rights and defending our democracy as job number one for the president and for Congress. Tomorrow, the For the People Act, a landmark bill that would protect our right to vote, that would get big money out of politics, that would end partisan gerrymandering, that would strengthen ethics laws, is going to be taken up. The House version has already passed, but it's now up to the United States Senate. We all know that there are real world obstacles. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is the only Democrat who has not signed on to the For the People Act. He's proposed alternatives in the hopes of getting Republican support. But after he proposed those alternatives, Mitch McConnell shot them down. And look, even if we get all 50 Democratic votes, we on this call know we then have a procedural hurdle. There is the archaic filibuster, which we know Republicans are going to deploy to suppress the right to vote and to suppress any effort to advance our progressive priorities. That being said, what we know as a community is that when we organize, we win. When there is a will, there is a way. Our revolution has been working very closely with Senator Jeff Merkley and other progressives in the United States Senate to get the For the People Act to where it is today. We've been working since last fall and even before. Right now, I want to welcome our leader in this fight, Senator Jeff Merkley. Welcome, Senator, and tell us a little bit about the state of play on this bill. What's going to happen tomorrow, and where do we plan to go from here?
Well, Joseph, I'm pretty upbeat right now. The tremendous amount of conversation and pressure and engagement from the grassroots community has really helped create the momentum that we needed to get this bill done before the summer. And that momentum has manifested itself in caucus discussions, in key conversations with Senator Manchin put forward a vision of the things he was concerned about. He put forward a vision of the things he'd like to see in the bill. Conversations and negotiations were happening through the weekend. And I think I'm feeling that the four core values that we're fighting for, and you mentioned them: billionaires can't buy elections, every American has the ability to vote, politicians can't gerrymander their district and destroy equal representation, and we eliminate conflicts of interest that prevent public servants from serving the public. These are core things in our DNA, and I think all of them are going to be protected by what comes out of that conversation. Tomorrow, we're voting on moving to the For the People bill on the floor. I hope we have a united caucus. It's not nailed down, but I think the good faith efforts of this last few days has really put that possibility forward. And then we intensify the negotiations that are already underway.
And Senator, let me ask you this, just to break down the technical details. So tomorrow is not a vote on the bill. It is a vote to proceed on talking about or debating the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's debating whether to debate. And really, this should just be a straight up and down vote we should get rid of the debate on motions to proceed, or limit it to half an hour for the two sides, and then just vote, because the time is so precious. We shouldn't be wasting it on voting whether to debate. But that's the way it is right now. And anything that's debatable can be filibustered if it's a policy bill. So therefore, that's where we'll end up tomorrow. Vote on whether to proceed, and we will not have 60 votes to close debate in order to get to a vote on whether to proceed. So it's a kind of a window onto the archaic practices of the Senate that greatly need modification. When Republicans were filibustering the motion to proceed to nominations, Senator Byrd back in the late 70s wiped that out and said it was such an abuse. We need to wipe that out here as well.
And so, Senator, let me ask you about this. If there is a filibuster, could we expect meaningful rule reform? Can we expect a talking filibuster that eventually, where Republicans run out of steam and we can move our agenda forward?
Well, I think about this as a series of bridges to pass. And one is to have a Democratic unity tomorrow, and I hope we will have that. 50 members saying it's time to have this debate on the floor of the Senate. Then we have to get together and say, well, Republicans blocked it. They don't even want the conversation to start. This is way too important. These are core constitutional principles. These are core values. This is the attacks that are happening on targeted groups to keep them from voting. Black Americans, minority communities, Native Americans, college students. We have to defend this. And then the conversation, okay, well, how do we get past this? Well, there's a premise that we need to really dwell on, and that is the social contract of the Senate has been that the minority can make things difficult, can delay in order to encourage compromise, can delay and to make sure they're heard, can delay to make sure they've had a chance to present amendments. But ultimately, the majority decides, not the minority. So you can turn the Senate into the cooling saucer, if you will, the proverbial cooling saucer, but not into a deep freeze. But Mitch McConnell has made it a deep freeze. So I think we have 50 members who like the idea of this social contract. And there's various ways we can restore that vision. And that vision was the heart of the conversation in the Senate from the beginning. That is that everyone could have a say before you voted on a bill. Everyone could participate before you voted on the bill. But it was not that the minority can paralyze the place. The reason it's called a filibuster, it means piracy. It was labeled that way in the 1850s because it was pirates taking over the Senate and breaking the basic understanding that in the end, it's a majority that decides, not the minority that decides. So 50 members getting into a room and deciding how we go forward will be kind of another stage of how we proceed. There will be a chance to take the type of conversation that we've had with the 50 members over the substance to see if any Republicans will join us. The assumption is 10 will not join us to overcome. Then we have to proceed with how we make sure we get this bill to the floor and make sure we get to the possibility to a final vote.
So, Senator, you're saying you don't even expect a single Republican to say, hey, let's move forward with the bill and have a debate?
You know, I keep thinking that there's a few who want to. And I think about the Disclose Act. I remember one Republican senator telling me how important it was to pass the Disclose Act. But when McConnell lowered the boom and said, as a caucus, we are going to oppose closing debate, we couldn't get a single Republican to join us. We only needed one at the time. We had 59 Democrats. We only needed one with us to close debate. We couldn't get it. And I think that that leverage, that power that McConnell has over the entire Republican caucus is probably going to prevent the moderates who would like to join us from joining us tomorrow. They'll cook up some story like the time is not ripe yet, or there's elements they don't like, but they probably believe it should be on the floor, but probably don't want to incur the wrath of the big far-right funding mechanism that propels Republicans into office with dark money.
And so I wanted to just follow up on that. What's at stake here? Like, if this does not move, what do you think it means for Democrats in the midterms? What does it mean for the rest of our agenda for the rest of this congressional session? What does this, I mean, this bill kind of, a lot is riding on this.
Well, I can tell you it's what it means. It means Republican legislatures at the state level and governors will proceed to extend the barriers they erect for communities to vote. Those communities will be communities that lean to the Democratic side. It means the purple states will, for all purposes, become red states. It means the Senate will be controlled by Republicans for a very long time to come. It means the vision of the powerful controlling our country for the powerful, rather than the people controlling it for the people. It is really hard in a republic to preserve the vision of government of, by, and for the people, because there are those folks with lots of money and lots of connections that don't like that, because they want tax cuts for the rich and powerful. They want policies for their corporations. They don't want healthcare, housing, education, living wage jobs, equality, or taking on climate. They don't want those things. And so they're trying to pull the puppet strings, and they've done that very effectively with the Republican Party. I mean, the fossil fuel cabal is certainly the single most powerful puppet master of the Republican caucus. So we are going to lose the opportunity to proceed to basically enact legislation for the people for a decade or decades to come. And so it's very, very, very bleak. It's policy and political Armageddon if you believe in the vision of our Constitution.
Policy and political Armageddon. So Senator Merkley, what should our revolution members do in this moment to fight back?
You have to tell every member there is no excuses for failing to defend the Constitution. You have to remind us we took an oath of office. You have to remind us that at various points, this vision has been in grave peril, and leaders have stepped forward to save it. I think about Gettysburg Address, when Lincoln was talking about the Civil War and the purpose of fighting. And he said that the vision of government of, by, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Well, it's very close to perishing from America right now. And so tell us no excuses. Remind us that when Mitch McConnell wanted to pass things for the powerful, he simply changed the rules. He got rid of the filibuster on Supreme Court nominees, so he could pack it with corporate Federalist Society members who put corporate power over consumers, over the environment, over individual rights of every kind. When he wanted tax cuts for the rich, he changed the rules for reconciliation, not once, but twice, to make that happen. When he wanted to accelerate the packing of the district and circuit courts, he increased the speed with which judges could be confirmed 15 times by decreasing it from 30 hours of debate to 2 hours of debate. The Republicans got the job done for the powerful. You have to insist that we get the job done for our Constitution and for the people.
So brothers and sisters, that is our call to action. We have to mobilize to make sure that the For the People Act moves forward. And look, at the end of the day, this is about power. If you can't win an election, Republicans lost. What did they decide to do? Let's change the rules so that we can win next time. And look, if we let them change the rules with impunity, as they are succeeding in doing, we're going to lose. We're going to lose our shot to advance to win Medicare for all. We're going to lose our shot to end fossil fuel subsidies and save our climate. We're going to lose our chance to win 15 in the union. So this is foundational. If we don't preserve our power by preserving our voting rights, game over. Political and policy Armageddon. That is no joke. A serious call to arms. Senator Merkley, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you're in the midst of very important conversations ahead of tomorrow. I want to let you know that our members are going to be on Capitol Hill full force. We're going to be standing outside calling for the Senate to move forward on the For the People Act. We're going to be out there also calling for DC statehood to be passed. And we are going to have a national phone bank day of action. So brothers and sisters, for all of you who heard Senator Merkley and his call to arms, we need to stand up. Wherever you are, you must contact your senator, whether Democrat or Republican. If Republican, move on the motion to proceed. Let's have a debate. They can vote yes. It's not on the substance, it's just on the procedure. If you're represented by a Democratic senator, call them, tell them that this has got to get through. This is a non-negotiable. We have a tool called New Mode in which you can get patched through to your senator. We're going to put that link in the chat. We have 7,245 people who are on the phones and in the Zoom room. If each of you call, that will send a ripple. And each of you recruit another person to call their senator tomorrow, it'll be even bigger. We got to...
Joseph, I don't want to interrupt you, but I will just to say goodbye and thank you to your members carrying this fight forward. It's people power that's going to save our country and our vision and our We the People Republic. Thank you.
Senator Merkley, thank you for your leadership, and we're going to keep fighting. So again, I urge everyone, take action with the link in the chat. Share that with your friends and allies. We have to flood the phone lines tomorrow. As I said, I'm going to be on Capitol Hill tomorrow with our Revolution members from the DMV. We need you to be on Capitol Hill tomorrow, whether by phone or sending emails. Take action. So, and that being said, I want to just do a pitch for membership. Why does being a member of our revolution matter? Is because we're grassroots funded. We are not funded by the billionaires. The billionaires have an operation and it's working. They're gutting voting rights around the country. We have to fight back. We have organizers like Jenny Craig who are putting pressure on Joe Manchin. We have organizers in West Virginia, in Arizona, who are going to do some amazing things tomorrow. But that is only possible because of our members. If you are already a monthly member, thank you. If you're not, please take this opportunity to sign up in the chat. Becoming a movement builder means that we're going to get the For the People Act over the finish line. And then we're going to move on to get healthcare for all and win on climate. Marissa?
Thanks, Joseph. Our next speaker is Texas State Representative Jasmine Crockett, who represents the 100th District, which is in the Dallas metro area. She's a former civil rights attorney who was elected in January and was one of the Democrats who staged a last-minute walkout last month to kill a GOP bill that would have enacted statewide voter restrictions. Texas Democrats just don't talk the talk, they walk the walk. And welcome, Jasmine. You were at a rally just a few days ago speaking about the For the People Act and talking about the walkout. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened at the walkout and your perspective on it?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you to both of you for putting this together. And thank you so much to our revolution. Literally, we are trying to save the country. And it's going to take more than just those few of us that are elected. We're supposedly elected to represent your voices. And so it's amazing that you guys are taking all the time that you are taking to hold those that are elected to represent us accountable. So thank you so much, first of all, for that. The walkout. I'll talk about yesterday first because it may be a little easier than talking about the walkout. But yesterday was really kind of a culmination of what was a really intense week for many of us that participated in the walkout. We actually then went on to DC. We wanted to have these conversations. We wanted to make sure that our voices were heard as the legislators that walked out. We didn't want them to get their information from the media. We wanted them to get their information directly from us and be able to ask any questions that they may need to ask us. But we ultimately wanted to impress upon them how serious and significant of an issue this was. And so basically a lot of us left DC on Thursday. And on Wednesday, I had received a call from Beto. And Beto had left a voicemail just asking if I would be willing to participate in a rally at the Capitol here in Austin. And of course, I said that I would. And so it was like the most beautiful blue thing that we have in Texas all came together at the Capitol. And it was anywhere from, it was everywhere. It was star-studded, basically. And we were all just talking about the history of voting in this country and what's going on in Texas and what the real intent behind SB 7 is and was, and that's voter suppression. The state of Texas is a majority minority state. When we look at the growth that we've experienced over the last 10 years, it's been Black and brown. That's the bottom line. The numbers don't lie. We don't have our official census numbers, but that's what we get from the demographers. And so this is a power grab. As the senator so ably said, so often they just go ahead and move the goalpost, right? And sadly enough, we as Democrats are consistently trying to say, oh, well, let's all try to get along. The reality is that there's been a breakdown in communication and we've got to fight. And so I was very excited when my colleagues said, yes, we're going to walk, because honestly, I had been wanting to walk. I felt like we were getting steamrolled all session with all these crazy, terrible bills that sadly enough will change who we are and how we experience Texas for years to come. Because right now, I don't see how we get our numbers to work so that we can get something in the Senate. So even if we flip the state, I think we could potentially pick up and get some statewide seats. I think that we could potentially flip the House. That Senate is going to stay red for quite some time, sadly enough. So we're stuck with some of these crazy bills that they came out with. We're having to debate critical race theory yet again as a governor priority, allegedly. So if I walk you back to the walkout, let me just say that we all come from different districts. My district is a majority minority district. It's 40% Black, 40% Hispanic, and about 20% white. It has been a seat that has historically always been held by an African American. And so understanding my district, understanding their issues, I knew that the authentic me was exactly who my district would love and want to represent them. I'm very connected with my district. And so I just didn't understand why we had to lose every single thing just because we didn't have the numbers. So as I started to learn all of the rules and how we could potentially thwart some of this, I was like, why didn't we do this earlier? I wanted to walk on SB 7 the first time, but God has a way of working things out. So everyone talks about the fact that we killed the voter suppression bill, but we also killed a terrible bail bill that really upset the governor. It was an awful bail bill. We also killed a terrible bill that was going to be detrimental to any working families. So we actually killed some other really bad things on that night. It was kind of like the perfect storm, though. Essentially, the Republicans decided to go too far. It was even too far for many of my colleagues that tend to play in the middle a little bit because they wanted to overturn elections and make that easier. Now, we've seen in the media that they've walked that back, said, oh, we don't know how that got in there. But that's part of the problem. The Republicans know that they have the numbers. They don't care about the substance. And so that's when I started to have issues with this process, because if you're not going to take the time to care about the laws that will be affecting 30 million people in this country, I don't know that you really should be in the position. But your constituency will continue to elect you regardless of how negligent you are, regardless of how reckless you are. So ultimately, it just kind of went too far for even some of those in the middle. We only had about 48 to 49 colleagues that actually had agreed initially that they would walk. That put us on the border. There were some Republicans that were out for various reasons. There were other Democrats that were out for various reasons. So that was enough to get us there. But if we lost one person, we were really running the risk of not being able to effectuate this quorum break. Ultimately, I think it got so intense on the floor for even some of those that hadn't initially planned to break quorum when they saw how hard the Republicans were going to fight to get this bill across the finish line. I think that in that moment, for some of them, everything changed and they ultimately walked out. We did not know that we had officially broken quorum until we were actually traveling to the church that we were set up to have a press conference at. And we were going to have a press conference to talk about this, whether we broke quorum or not.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing about your experience. And, you know, based on your experience with the walkout, what message do Texas Democrats have for U.S. Senate Democrats after this?
Yeah, you know what was really interesting is I did have an opportunity to sit down with Senator Manchin's chief of staff, and I want to say maybe his chief legal advisor. I'm not really sure of the official title. They kind of admitted, and it makes sense, we all get in our own bubbles, right? And you can hear your colleagues saying, hey, we need to pass, HR 1 or HR 4. You can hear them saying that. And they can say that it's really important, but it's the actions that really do speak louder than words. And that was one of the things that I was stressing to my colleagues when we were debating whether or not there was going to be a walk. I said, you've got to give people a reason to want to vote for you. I mean, if you can't fight with everything that you've got, then why would they actually decide that they want to come out and vote for you? That's when they say, what is the point? That's when they say you don't represent us. So regardless of kind of what ultimately would happen, seeing the action from us should energize people. They better understand that it's just that serious, right? Because they say, wait a minute, they did something that's only been done 4 times in the history of the existence of Texas, right? And the last time was 2003. Before that, it was the 1970s. And before that, it was the 1870s. We had to ring the alarms. And so as we're sitting down there with Manchin staff, and Manchin staff says, we'll be honest. We don't know what all was in that bill, but you guys walking caught our attention. And we took it a step further because we decided that we were going to fly in on our own dimes and we were going to have these conversations. That's when they realized it's just that serious. And those that are allies of ours on the federal level, we're so thankful, we're so appreciative of the actions that we took because we amplified the message that they've been pushing for some time. But their colleagues, they were a little deaf to it. And it happens. It happens to all of us. I'll be up there arguing about George Floyd and police reform. I'll be pouring out my heart. I'll be talking about racism. And they'll be on their phones texting somebody, right? So we get into these spaces, and I know what they were experiencing. And so, it seemed like it was the injection that they needed in the movement. And honestly, I also hoped that some of these other state legislative bodies that are suffering through kind of the remnants of Trumpism, right? I was hoping that some of them would find some hope as well and say, man, if Texas could do it, then we can do it, right? Because Texas is just, as crazy as they come. So it's like if the Democrats in Texas can rise up, then surely we can. And so even at the rally yesterday, I said, people don't realize that we really are in the middle of a movement. Like we shifted the paradigm just a little bit when we decided to get up. And honestly, I pray and hope that the midterms don't turn out the way that many anticipate that they will, because I'm hoping that the people become hopeful because they're finally starting to feel like they're getting the representation that they deserve.
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing that. We got to move on to our next speaker, and thank you so much for joining us. We're just running short on time. To Joseph.
That was Representative Jasmine Crockett, and our revolution endorsed candidate who is fighting for voting rights in Texas. And we have progressives all across the country who are fighting. And what Representative Crockett said that I think is so important is action matters louder than words. And if you lead with action, others will follow. And that's what our revolution is doing. We're mobilizing. We will be mobilizing on Capitol Hill tomorrow. We are going to be mobilizing around the country to get our members to call senators to pass this bill. And we will be mobilizing, doing actions with a coalition of partners under the banner of Deadline for Democracy, because that is what is at stake. It is our democracy. Our next speaker is going to tell us a little bit about the coalition's work. We'll be working with partners like Public Citizen, Indivisible, to be rolling out actions over the next several weeks. We need to keep sustained pressure on our lawmakers so that they will follow our example. Right now, I am honored to introduce Barbara Arnwine, who is going to tell us a little bit about what's coming up with the Deadline for Democracy Coalition. Barbara is the founder of the Transformative Justice Coalition, and she's a leading voice on civil and voting rights. She was the former leader of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which is one of the leading civil rights organizations in our country. Barbara, welcome to our call. Tell us what's coming up.
Wow, everything. And it's not going to be right unless all of us and everybody we know get involved, right? I'm just so proud of all of you who are here tonight and for all of the work that we're going to get done, that we've been getting done. Remember, Manchin was talking about, he was a no, wrote a whole op-ed about how he wasn't going to vote for the People Act. It was, and people, all the media was saying it was dead as a doorknob, all of this. And folks put the heat on. They made some calls, and some of us went to Charleston and marched on his office. The next day, suddenly light bulbs were going off. And there was, quote, a compromise proposal. Now we need to do some work on that compromise because it's not where it should be. But still, it was people power. People power, it's always moved everything. It's a mistake to think it's just somehow the goodwill of Congress, the goodwill of some legislators. No, it's the people who demand change, and this change that we demand that happens and are pushing. So what we got to do is right now, we know there's this vote tomorrow on the debate, and we got to fire up every phone line that we can to make sure that these senators know that they better vote the right way. Now let me be very clear. The heat not only came on Manchin, you heard this weekend that people booed Ron Johnson at the Juneteenth event. So people are serious. Folks listen, people underestimate how angry voters are about all these attempts to strip and deny and kill their rights. So we want to make sure that this week that we turn out strong. On the 23rd at 1:00, the Poor People's Campaign is leading a march on Manchin and McConnell, because we got to bring the heat to all the sides. This is not just about Dems. It's not just about Republicans. It's about all sides coming and doing the right thing. So we're going to bring the heat. And you can get more information about that at poorpeoplescampaign.org/Manchin. You can also, on the 26th, the Freedom Ride 2021 that is going all around the country with Latasha Brown and Black Voters Matters and all of us. I just got off that road recently. It's coming to Washington, D.C. on Saturday. And we're going to have a big rally at 12 noon at 3rd and Pennsylvania on the National Mall itself in front of the Capitol. And we're going to be bringing the heat on these senators because we need the For the People Act like yesterday. These 400 crazy pieces of voter suppression legislation, these 48 states where they're moving these 22 pieces of legislation that has passed, all these, 8 states, 12 states that have done wrong. Listen, the beauty of the For the People Act is that it puts the stake through that vampire's heart, because this is how we stop it. We stop it by uniform national federal standards for federal elections and forcing them to do the right thing. So that's the beauty of it. We also need the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and we'll do that when it's time too. When it's introduced, we're going to push and make sure, because we need both. But anyway, the next thing that we want people to know is that deadline for democracy means precisely what it says. We're on a deadline for democracy. We got to pass these bills this year. We need to pass them way before the midterm elections. And we need to certainly pass them before the November 2021 elections. So we got a deadline for democracy. So we're saying to everybody that we need to turn out and keep the heat up. It's the heat that's been getting the reaction. As long as folks think that people are just going to sit back and not vote and not be concerned about what they're doing, the more they're going to do wrong. But the way we change it, the way we own it, the way we get it done is by keeping the heat up. So the deadline for democracy is 2 weeks of heat, almost 2 weeks of heat from the time they leave on the 28th until they come back. We're going to, in July, roughly, July 12th, when they get back or whatever, we're going to put that heat on them. And we're asking you to turn out with us, to keep that heat going. You can get a lot of great information, on what we're going to do, but we're asking people to do the hot summer calls. We're asking people to do all the organizing, to do the out in the street action like we did on May 8th. But we're going to also turn out on July 10th, underscore July 10th, all around the country. We're going to turn out and we're going to bring concerted, collective heat. So let's do this, people. I am so proud of you. Thank you for being on this call tonight, because you could be a whole lot of other places, but you know what time it is. And the moment never waits. The moment, you either rise to it or it passes you by. But this is a moment in which we're going to rise. Not only are we going to rise, we're going to win. Thank you so much for having me.
Barbara Arnwine, the leader of the Transformative Justice Coalition, thank you so much for joining us. There is a deadline for our democracy, and that is For the People Act. And we are proud to be joining with the Deadline for Democracy Coalition to do actions around the country. And tomorrow we'll be on Capitol Hill. Tomorrow we'll be phone banking our U.S. senators. And we'll be standing in solidarity with all of our coalition members. And I want to say this again to all of you who are on this call, join us in taking action. If you can volunteer to make calls, join us. We need your help. But you can also join by becoming a member of our revolution. Give $5 a month, become a recurring donor, help us fund the work to keep the revolution going strong. Elections come and go, and in between elections, Republicans try to rig the rules. We're here to stop them. Support our work, help us work with Senator Merkley, with our allies, and put an end to voter suppression and an end Trumpism in the United States. Marissa, over to you.
So tomorrow is the New York City primary, where over 30 progressive champions endorsed by our revolution and our affiliate, New York Progressive Action Network, will be competing. Our revolution members have made 268,000 voter contacts, including phone banks for Tahani Abushi, our pick for Manhattan DA. You'll be hearing from Tahani shortly, but first I want to give a warm welcome to Cynthia Nixon, an award-winning actor, progressive advocate, and lifelong New Yorker, to talk about tomorrow's election. Welcome, Cynthia, and thank you for joining us. You're going to be introducing our next guest, Tahani Abushi, who's running for Manhattan DA. But first, before you do that, we've heard that there are some candidates who are using their personal wealth and Wall Street money to tip the scales in their favor. What's your take on tomorrow's contest? Do you think progressives can win against big money?
I think that, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, great. Tahani's race is a kind of an incredible, case in point. I mean, we have a wide field of people. We have a few progressives in the race. Tahani is hands down the most progressive, having gotten, so many important endorsements, including Bernie, including RREV, including NIPAN, including the majority of the DSA slate, and Jamal Bowman, Jumaane Williams. The list just goes on and on. We have a billionaire we have a number of wealthy people in the race, but we also have a billionaire in the race who has not only, her list of donors is a who's who of Wall Street. Not only does she have more $5,000 donations than $5 donations, but in the last 2 weeks of the race, she gave herself an $8.2 million donation just for the last 2 weeks of the race, which is, for example, more than any mayoral candidate has, even though there's some wealthy people in that race too. So, but the good thing about Tahani's race is how incredibly inspiring it is. And I think what's happening, if I could take a step back, I ran for governor 3 years ago. And I ran for a lot of reasons, but one was because we had been fighting for the $4 billion plus that our school kids across New York State were owed, that our governor, who is a Democrat in name only, a dino, refused to pay, and it refused to even acknowledge that the highest court in the land had ordered him to do that. So we ran to actually say, hey, you think that New York is this incredibly blue place, and it has, 2-to-1 Democratic voters, blue voters, but we're back in the dark ages because of who our governor is, and because he actually wants to keep the Republicans in power through all these fancy tricks that he does. So what was amazing was that even, although that I didn't actually get elected and oust Cuomo, so many progressive candidates who ran alongside me in both the New York State Legislature and the New York State Senate actually did get elected. And what we've seen in the last 3 years since we all ran is an incredible transformation in New York. And I'll tell you, and the $4 billion that I've been fighting for, and that my wife has been fighting for since 2001, that's 20 years, in case you didn't do the math, got passed this year. And in the last couple of years, we passed the most progressive rent laws in the country. And we passed, really incredible bail reform. And we brought our abortion laws in line with the federal standard. And we gave, undocumented people driver's licenses. And we passed the Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. And the list goes on and on and on. And we were able to do that because of the not just progressive people that ran, but frankly, the Democratic Socialists who ran, because we've watched, actually, I've been involved in the fight to take back the New York State Senate for the Democrats for a long time. And what happened was we kept electing Democrats who would then get flipped by the governor and incentivized to go over and caucus with the Republicans, giving them a majority when they actually didn't have one. So what we started doing was say, hey, actually, if we elect Democratic Socialists who have this really hardcore set of beliefs, they can't be bought. And it's why we were able to pass some of the things that I mentioned and many more, including the most progressive rent laws in the country. And what happened was, the other side and the real estate lobby and was just, they weren't prepared for it. But they're pretty freaked out now. So what we're seeing now in the election, across the board, not just for DA, not just for mayor or comptroller, but for city council, we're seeing that so many multi-millionaires and billionaires and really dark money and Republican money, they're playing not in just in these major races, but also in the city council, because they saw what our New York State Senate and our New York State Assembly could do when they had this handful of real, Democratic Socialists in there. And there are a lot of, an amazing slate of Democratic Socialists and other progressives running in the city council. And so they're just funneling money in. But as so many people have been saying on this call, we have the window is open right now, and the scales have fallen from people's eyes on so many issues, whether it's Medicare for all, or whether it's Black Lives Matter, or whether it's the importance of passing a Green New Deal, and what we and the wealthy are just dumping money in, and so it'll be a really interesting election. And unfortunately, some of our more progressive mayoral candidates have had stumbles that have taken down their campaign, but we'll see. So I could keep talking, but do you want to ask me some more questions?
Well, we'd like to bring up Tahani if there's anything you'd like to say to
Right, I would love to. I would love to talk about Tahani. So I know Tahani from the gubernatorial campaign. She was a part of it, and she was a tremendous liaison to the Muslim community in New York. And she's a former president of the Muslim Democratic Club. She's a Bernie person, from not just from 2020, but also from 2016. And I think, I have never given so much to a campaign except for my own as I have to Tahani, because I'm just over the moon about her. And I know she will be such a transformative DA for not only for New York, but for the country, because she is a really hardcore progressive. Like her platform is not only the most detailed, but it is the most deeply progressive of any one of this wide field of people running. But she also, as Tahani often says, over the last 80 years, we've had four Democrats, Manhattan DAs, and they've all been white men. And we have not only the chance to elect the first woman, the first person of color, the first woman of color, the first Palestinian, the first Muslim, but I think most importantly, the first person from an impacted family, that when she was a teenager, she's one of 10 kids. She grew up in Brooklyn. And when she was a teenager, her father was incarcerated for a really minor nonviolent crime and was put away for 20 years. And when we talk about reforming the police, when we talk about ending mass incarceration and stopping the over prosecution and incarceration of people of color, this is what we need to do. We have to find the Tahanis out there who have not only deeply thought and practiced this new progressive vision for criminal justice reform, but have actually walked in the shoes. And it's the reason that New Yorkers across the board are so excited about Tahani's candidacy and are just embracing her as their own.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we look for in our endorsed candidates here, our revolution. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us and welcoming Tahani. And Tahani, would you like to, we'd love to hear you, and please come on down and say a few things about your race and how are you feeling, and let us know what you think about how we're gonna what makes you stand out from other candidates.
Yeah, well, hello, everyone. I'm so honored to be here and spend the eve of our election night with all of you, to our revolution, NIPAN, to the Bernie crew. You've really paved the way for a candidacy like mine in a place like Manhattan. And I'm really excited to continue to trailblaze and change up how we do things, not only in Manhattan, but across our country. I'm a civil rights attorney. My practice has been focused on making systemic changes. So whether I'm representing people who are victims of police violence or victims of sexual assault, I've been changing policy in our city to make sure that our government creates policies centered around people, not money and not favors. And as Cynthia said, it started when I was younger and my father was sentenced to 22 years. That's really the first time I ever stepped foot in a courtroom, and life as we knew it was over. We left our school, our home, and we had to start over. And we were really fighting against the statistics that say we're meant to be thrown in the streets. And so the decision a prosecutor makes is not only permanent, but it impacts families and communities for generations to come. And we have an automated injustice system that continues to criminalize communities of color to cover for the powerful and privileged that pretty much do whatever they want with impunity in our city. And so we need to put a stop to all of that. And we need to ensure that we talk about public safety from the perspective of those who are over-policed, over-prosecuted, and who are pre-criminalized before they can even finish school. Because we've seen the system show justice and mercy and leniency, but it always depends on your badge or your bank account. And so with all the fear mongering from NYPD unions to bring back racist tough on crime policies, with the spike in crime that has been used to make people comfortable with rights being violated and constitutional rights being violated, we need to push back on that rhetoric. We need to push back on the attempt to take advantage of people's fears and uncertainty and put us back into a draconian time that ushered in mass incarceration. But we are still dealing with the mass criminalization of people of color. And so for me, not only am I running in my race to make sure we create a system that both addresses the racial disparities and holds Wall Street accountable, but also keeping an eye on our mayor race and making sure that we're not going to elect a mayor who is going to take us back to those dark times, who's going to prop up the NYPD unions and their talking points, and will continue to criminalize communities of color. So I've been honored to run just an incredible, really grassroots campaign, shoestring campaign. Cynthia has been phenomenal. So has Christine. They've really brought us to this moment, and I feel so inspired and so ready to lock in this win tomorrow and get ready to work to shake things up. We have a lot on our plate. The future Manhattan District Attorney is going to have a lot of things to clean up, and we need somebody that is absolutely independent from that power structure, that doesn't rub elbows with these people or their donors, that doesn't owe anyone any favors, but is going to keep the best interest of all communities at the focus and at the center of everything we do. And so I'm excited to make history tomorrow, and so excited for all the support that we've gotten, and our revolution you've trailblazed. So I stand on your shoulders.
Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck tomorrow. And I hope everything goes well. And thank you again. Your story is so inspiring, and we look forward to all the great work that you're going to be able to do. And with that, I'm going to kick it to Joseph.
So want to, again, encourage everyone to tomorrow, if you are in New York, vote for Tahani. We need to continue electing progressive DAs all across the country. There is a reactionary force by the billionaire class. There's a reactionary force from police unions, from the right wing, but we need to push back and keep electing progressives. So that being said, I want to run down a few things that are happening this week. So not only tomorrow in New York, vote for progressives like Tahani. Tomorrow, we're going to be on Capitol Hill fighting for the People Act. And we're going to be fighting for DC statehood, two critical measures to defend our democracy. If you're in the DMV, come meet us. Let's send the Senate a message. Then after that, on Tuesday, Our Revolution Ohio is going to roll out its endorsements of candidates who are running for city councilors and mayor all around the state.
And on Sunday, join Our Revolution Massachusetts LGBTQ+ caucus as they talk with Senator Ed Markey and other elected officials about reimagining progressive pride in the Bay State. And if you are in the DC area, please make a plan to join us next week on Tuesday, June 29th. We will rally at the U.S. Capitol with Greenpeace, the Sierra Club, and other climate allies to tell Congress to stop giving our tax dollars to polluters. And like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a giant dinosaur, so you cannot miss it.
So brothers and sisters, thank you all again for joining us. All of our guests have an inspiring vision of the world that we together can create. Last week, we may have been hopeless. Today, we are hopeful. The arc of our history bends towards progress and justice, but only if we organize to win. Say it with me, brothers and sisters. When we organize,
We
We
win.
win.
when we organize,
We win.
when we organize,
We win.
good night.